Dwight, what's going on, man? Good evening, James. Just sitting at home, a little bored. Figured I'd make some motion. Some motion and commotion in the park. Welcome to the park, everybody. Try to do this as carefully as I can. Trying to get a good vantage point. So figured I'd do a little bit of nice. Yeah, your layout looks good, James. Hey, Kyle. What's going on, man? Yeah, your work is really clean, James. Pretty impressive. When you were sitting there at the bench yesterday, or the day before, whenever you were live, I was looking at the edges and the fascia and stuff. You did a nice job. Figured I'd do some little bit of motion back and forth. Monday, yeah. What's today? Say Tuesday? So it's funny when I was trying to I was trying to create the little scene so I could take some photos of the barn. Daryl, what's up, dude? And I the first two buildings that I built were warehouses, and this one actually goes on the front, this pink one. So I moved all that stuff around to take pictures. I made a little setting over there, moved the trees and everything. And so then I left the pink building over there. But that one was supposed to be in the front. When I designed the layout, it was supposed to be like an alley. Like when you cross the railroad tracks and you look down and you can see the length of the tracks. That was my original design inspiration. So there was buildings on the front and on the back, but it's only on part of it. But Pink Warehouse is very, very Miami. If you drove through Miami, Hialeah area, you would definitely see a pink warehouse, pink buildings, pink houses. You see all the pastel colors, flamingos. So I was just sitting at home, a little bored. I was gonna run trains, and I didn't see anybody who was live, so I figured I'd go live and just, yeah, that's right. A little bit. Well, right into the wall, bang, nice. Away we go with that one. Hey, Paul. Thanks for coming in. Just running some trains. Right now, I don't have any real purpose. I'm just pulling some cars in and out. I'll probably end up switching the East End warehouse here in a minute. This is usually what I do in the morning. I open up the window and I get direct sunlight on the track, and then I'll do a little bit of running just to hear the sounds and see the sight. I get a little bit of sound. You guys can hear me, right? Silence it out a little bit. So still working on this thing, trying to figure out how I'm going to finish this thing. So I've still got to build the upper part and put the lights on there. Yeah, you know what? These a lot of people really. I have both Tsunami and Lokesound, and a lot of times people claim that the Tsunami has a much slower crawl, but I can run these at speed step 1, which I'll do now, and they just creep along. I really like the Tsunami. I like both of them. They both have really good qualities. You know, I'll always say that when I run the Lokesound and I hit the brakes and that little brake squeal, for a guy who used to ride BMX bike as fast as he could, just lock up the brakes just to hear the tires screech. That'll always win. I'll buy Lokesound just for that. But it's really, they have a lot of programmable stuff, and it's a really good system too. Chris, what's up, man? But the Tsunami I really like because of the sound. The volume of sound that comes out of the model, out of the box, is undeniable. I mean, the horn, when you hit the horn, because in real life, you standing by a train and a horn is like a sonic blast. It's not a sound. That thing hits you in the chest and knocks the wind out of you. It'll grab your attention. That's what it's designed to do. So when you just hear the horn, that was the frustration I had with my Lokesound system, was the horn was as loud as the bell or the compressor. I mean, it wasn't. You couldn't hear that horn as pronounced as I thought it should be, and the Tsunami really has a much louder, more thick sound of a horn right out of the box. You don't have to do anything else with it. And I've bought both Sound-Equipped models that come with Lokesound and Tsunami too. And I like the EQ. I like that you can go and isolate different sounds. You can sit 3 locomotives right next to each other and tweak all the sounds, the horn, the bell, um, the amount of time it takes for the echo and delay, so it sounds like it's bouncing off a building. It's really cool. I'm, somebody that, was into music their whole life and always played with the sound and equalizer and tuning sound. It's been fun to play with that part. Daryl, the craziest crap, if I would doubt if LA was the same, but in Miami, the people were insane. I can't tell you how many times I saw just near misses. The train would be like feet from the crossing and people would still be going through. Like, don't you get it? This thing is going to kill you. It's incredible. People are really, really incredible. So I'll come back here with speed step 1. Again, we just creep by. I mean, it really does. Actually, I'll stack it up to 2. Let's go to speed step 2. And that's pretty good. Pretty good little crawl there. All right, Chris, question for you. We were talking earlier about apple cider donuts. Have you had apple cider donuts? I used to get them around Lake Taconic area, and they're phenomenal. That's one of my best. I mean, I loved apple cider, but the apple cider donuts were incredible. Dave, what's going on, man? Yeah, I love the FEC too. So I lived in Miami. I lived in actually 3 places on Dixie Highway. So in most places, Dixie Highway is split, and the trains run right through the middle. But 2 of the houses that I lived in there, I could see. It was basically like standing where I am right now. I could see they were this close. So it was like standing this close to the tracks. I used to see them all day, all night. Yeah, that's never a good thing, James. That's not good. But it's like I remember being a teenager and doing some crap too. Probably would have got me killed. So yeah, I lived really this close to the FEC line, and it was nice. It was comforting. And at night, sometimes I'd lay in bed and I could hear the train coming. I could hear the horn, and it would shake and rattle my house. Yeah, man, apple cider donuts. God, I wish I could have one. And you're lucky too, because I think you live right around Kingston, and I know in Kingston, Kiskatom, and Catskill, there was Angela Pizza, and that was one of the greatest pizzas. I worked at the one in Kiskatom as a kid on 9W. That those people knew how to make pizza. That family knew doing and there was a lot of good places. There was a place in Saugerties. That was like a biker bar. I think it was called Frank's, and that place was dynamite pizza. It had a movie theater next door, so we used to go to the movie theater, go in there and grab a pizza. Back when you could take food into the movie theater, nobody gave a crap. So we'd walk in there with a whole pizza. Yeah, apple cider donuts, dude. There's nothing. And I like donuts. I like all kinds of donuts, but apple cider donuts are a whole different level. Daryl, you're missing out, buddy. Apple cider donuts are phenomenal. They're like a cake donut, almost like you get at Dunkin' Donuts. But they're usually, if they're done right, they're almost like a fritter. They're really crispy on the outside, and they're like cake on the inside. But the just the smell and the flavor is phenomenal. And just the aroma of them. Yeah, that's one thing I miss, apple cider. So when I was really young, my dad's friend owned a cider mill, and we would go there, and I would just walk up to the edge of the. Um, yeah, why do we talk about food? Food makes the trains go. That's why. Yeah, pretty much. That's right. Oh, missed my turn here. So let me switch you guys around here. See if we can get a long shot. If I can zoom on the life. Nope, can't zoom. Yeah, that's what it was. So there was a lake, and the Taconic Parkway ran pretty much parallel to the New York State Thruway, and all along there were places that had orchards and stuff like that. So you could stop and get cider donuts. The last time I went home, that was like one of my first things. Fill my car up, trunk of my car up with apple cider and gourds out and apple cider donuts. See if I can move it a little closer. All right, bear with me, guys. Moving the camera. I'm trying to make this as painless as possible. Earthquake. Hey, PKNW, what's going on, man? Yeah, I'm just having fun. Like I said, I'm only 2 years into this project. I worked on my grandfather's railroad as a kid, and I had things. I tried to build it little tiny N scale layout maybe 20 years ago that didn't do anything. But this has been a fun project. I've had a lot of fun with it. Let's see if we can pull that guy out. Most of the stuff I did as a kid with him, I would there must be. I don't know the answer to that, but there's so much sugar cane in Florida that there has to be a sugar refinery there. Probably owned by Domino or some large company like that. Dixie Crystals, God knows, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised. But the warehouse that I modeled, that big tan warehouse in the back, was in is an actual building in Miami. I'm maybe at a third or half the size. It's about 800 foot long in real life, and it houses several different businesses. So that was what I tried to model, and there was a couple of food-based businesses in there. So that was my goal, was to model something like that, like have a place that does baked goods or makes arepas or something. I don't know. And then on the south side, so this, I've got a little bit of delay here, but this little spur right there is a warehouse, and that's Mr. Green's. It's a produce business, and they deliver all over South Florida. I'm on the West Coast now, and they come here. Hey, Russ. How you doing tonight, buddy? Sparky, you know what I was thinking, because I don't know if I'd ever build a Helix, but if I was going to build a multi-level layout, I would just build the whole thing a Helix. That to me makes much more sense. Just turn the whole layout into one giant Helix. And that way you don't have to mess around with an actual Helix. I got a reefer way down in that corner there. That wasn't good. Little technical difficulty. Hit the wrong button. Try that again. See if we can get that guy out of there. Cranky. Oh, sorry about that. Kick the tripod. Oh, that's good. There we go, Hand of Doom. Come in and save the day. All right, that settles that. All right, sorry I missed up on the chat here. Yeah, Sprague, I'm not necessarily saying that like if you built the Helix, like the whole thing, but if you had a room size, I mean, if you work out the math, just in the trains, what's up, dude? I think you can get away with, some elevation here and then a lot of flat spots, but I think you can, yeah, they would roll all the way to the bottom. You can incorporate the same theory instead of just jumping in one corner and scrolling up all the way to the next level. You could probably you'd probably need a little bit. You couldn't do it in a 10 by 10 foot room probably, but if you had a bigger space, a basement, you certainly could do it. Just like, if you were to travel, anywhere with elevation over miles, you could change elevation and not feel it. But that way you would have multiple levels. It'd just be like standing in a giant helix. Yeah, California's long. It's like me. I'm in Southwest Florida. I could drive for 6 hours and still be in Florida. A little sound. Justin, it's 8'9" I think, by 15.5 at most. I cheated in the center to give myself a little bit of depth because otherwise that scene would have just looked too silly. It was just too shallow. But it's not that big, but it's big enough. And I used to have a runaround in the center of it, but I used crappy track and I had to rip it out. So now I have two separate lines. So you can't go from the north side to the south side. But I'm thinking about putting a little bit of like a table on the end of it, like a little detachable thing where I can actually make a crossover. But I'm also thinking about just scrapping this and starting something else, so anything can happen. Well, I can tell you that because of so many displaced Canadians in Florida, we have runabouts everywhere now here as well. So don't feel like the Lone Ranger. And my favorite is in Hollywood, Florida. They actually have a roundabout with traffic lights, which makes absolutely no sense because that's the whole purpose of having a roundabout is to eliminate the traffic light. But you can actually sit in a traffic circle at a traffic light. Go figure. Let's see if I can play it for you. You know what, Just? I think 12 to 16 foot, if you're going to do HO, is probably the best starting point. 16 is probably a solid size because then you can really you can run more than a couple cars and a train and really do some decent switching. 8 foot is just, but again, when I started this, I had no idea. So I had an engine that my grandfather gave me, and then I bought 1 or 2 FEC engines because I went to the store to buy parts and try to make my grandfather's stuff work, and just get some track and everything. And I didn't have any rolling stock, so I had to guess. And there is no manufacturer that lists dimensions of their product on anywhere. So if you want to know how big a 60-foot boxcar is, you have to have a ruler. So I had to buy a ruler, a scale ruler, just to figure that stuff out, because you don't know. So I had to do a lot of guessing, and luckily, Trackside Mike, howdy. So I had to really guess at the sizing, and luckily I did pretty well. A roundabout is a traffic circle, Daryl. But that's one of the tricky things. So you buy like a 80-foot car, and you have no idea how big that is on a track, unless you have one or you have experience with that stuff. So I would have figured out a way to make this bigger. It started off as a 4-foot track plan. It was just supposed to be a simple thing just to run my grandfather's trains. And then, I was finding wood. Like, I didn't buy any of the wood to make this. I found it all in the garbage. There was a motorcycle dealer up the street that had a bunch of scrap wood that they took apart from the motorcycle crates and stuff like that. I took a bunch of that wood. It stands on pallets. There's 4 pallets on its side. I found 4 brand new pallets that have, yeah, it's like a helix for trains, except you just go around. Remember European Vacation, where he's going, look kids, Big Ben, Parliament, and they're just going around and around and around? That's a traffic circle. So in Florida, they put them everywhere, and some of the places aren't bad. So you have some back roads that are busy, they're smaller roads, but they have a lot of traffic, and the traffic circle is only a couple hundred feet, in diameter, but it does save you from stopping and having to wait for some idiot this side, and you know what I mean. So just go around in a circle. It's not that bad. It does help in some cases. Because idiots abound in Florida. Joseph, how are you, man? Yeah, it's not that big, buddy. I'll if you give me a second, I'll zoom. I mean, you can go from one end to another here pretty quickly. So that's the end of the board to the one side, and then we'll zoom back down to the other side. And that's it. That's the end of the other one. So it's not that big. That's pretty much it. You're welcome, man. Thanks, Chris. I really went on a tree binge at the beginning and built trees like crazy. I think I built over 50 trees. And my goal was, as I started to get better, because every set of trees I made was that much more realistic. And I figured I would just put them on there and let them all fight. So if you go back and look at old pictures, especially in my community tab, there was just trees everywhere. And then I've slowly plucked them off and I've replaced with trees. The power lines, the telephone poles actually help replace the visual aspect of having like a vertical obstruction like a tree. So a lot of the places where I used to have trees, I have telephone poles now, and it helps reinforce that. Um, but yeah, the trees were really fun to make, and I'm gonna make. So a lot of people have asked how. So for months I've been working on a plan. So I'm gonna make 3 different trees. I'm gonna make a Florida scrub pine, which is basically these trees down here. The Florida oak, which I don't think I have any, and then these trees which were supposed to look like a melaleuca. Well, here's a tiny Florida oak. You can kind of see right here, this guy. And then like the melaleucas, which was more like a vertical. So it wasn't necessarily, because there's so many tutorials on there, great tutorials of how to build and make trees. There's tons of them out there, like wire armature trees. Nobody needs me to show them how to do that part. But I struggled with how a tree is constructed, like the bone structure. How does it become a 3-dimensional object? And I had a really hard time with that. And I, as an artist, I had painted and drawn trees my whole life. But that was my biggest struggle. And then I kind of figured out some tricks to work my way through that. So I'm going to share those and make those 3 trees. And if you can do those 3 trees, you can probably make any tree. So it's less about, the actual tree making process. It's going to be more about understanding how a tree is structured. The actual, I don't have it. Dwight, will you print me some broccoli, please? Willow trees would, yeah, that would be more along the line of like a melaleuca probably. So it's branch structure, whereas the pines have, the Florida scrub pine is amazing because, you can look at 100 of them and 90 of them are very pine tree looking, and the other 10% look like they were like sculpted by a Japanese master. They're absolutely gorgeous. And I've got tons of pictures, but if you ever drive through Southwest Florida, Miami, that area, especially in like the older rural parts, you see the most magnificent pines. They look like, something out of like an old Japanese painting or something. They're just gorgeous. So that was my inspiration. If you look at my community tab yesterday, I posted a pine that I had made in that style. Yeah, Chris, that's why I want to do it, because I think I have a pretty simple system that should be easy to follow, and I've been working on that for a while. And it's just like all of model railroading. You have so many hats. You're a landscaper one day, a carpenter, an electrician, a city planner, a engineer, a road worker. It's crazy. You have so many different things that you got to do. You're a painter. So to cycle back around the trees has taken me a bit. There were some other projects that I had lined up that I really wanted to finish first, but I will get to it, and then you could see how I made all of these. Yeah, that's, trunk size is important. The sizing was important. And some of these trees, like if you look directly at this picture where the B&O gondola is, if you look behind it, that tree, I think, is about 8 inches tall. So it's a 65 foot tree. Dwight, it's, if you look at, I know there are some great tutorials. So the first thing, if you want to build good trees, buy some wire and start bending the wire. And there's a lot of great tutorials online about just bending the wire. And once you start to figure that out, then you couldn't find it. If you go to Michael's craft store, or any, like, what's the Joanne fabric, they have it. I think it's 26 gauge or something like that. You want thin wire, you can get copper wire. The thin wire works good. I know a lot of people use wire from the florist and stuff. Those are the 2 wires that I use. There's a wire, 26 gauge wire, I think it is, that's black. at Michaels, and that's what I use because it's already black. I don't have to worry about the color, but I've used all different kinds. Yeah, Hobby Lobby, I'm sure has it. And then, you know, it's pretty simple. I think Luke Towan has a good video on the actual bending of the wire, but there's a ton of them out there, and that's once you figure it out, you just got to play. It's they're not going to be perfect. I showed you the picture of my first tree. It was silly. I was so proud of that thing, and it looks absolutely ridiculous. Russ, you don't have to be an artist, but it really helps to study things. You know, and I don't mean like go get books and stuff, but to go out and look at things, you know, touch, feel, kind of get an idea. You've got to, that's what I do. I go out and I look at everything. I study everything. I take pictures of it and I study those pictures. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'll take pictures of like ground, just dirt or, you know, pavement or cracked sidewalks or something like that, because I want that look. That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah, I take a lot of pictures, Sparky. And then you just look at those pictures, look at the color, look at the shading, look at the texture, look at how, you know, the different things interplay with each other, different type of light. The beauty about a model railroad is you know where the light is coming from. If you haven't figured out where the light's coming from on your layout by now, there's problems that nobody's going to be able to help you with. You know, so you can be 100% sure you know where the light is coming from. So just the basic theory of how light affects an object, you've already got, you know, that conquered because you know where the light's coming from. So that all your highlights, all the bright things are going to be towards that light. All the darker things are going to be away from that light. I paint everything, and that was something that I caught from Boomer when he was just painting everything, and it clicked in immediately. So anywhere where there's a vertical obstruction, I paint a shadow on the ground. So if I have a tree, I make the ground darker underneath the tree. I go in there with dark brown, dark gray, or whatever it is, and I'll actually paint a shadow on the ground. If you look here, I've got the tanks. And I know I showed this, I think on the last live stream that I did for Daryl. The tanks are painted. There's a shadow on the ground. I'm not going to pick it up to show you the ground, but if you look at how this is painted, right? It looks like there's a shadow. I know the light's coming from this direction, right? I can see where the shadow is. And there's a shadow under it. It gives it dimension, right? But it's not painted. It's black. Right? White, black. I painted the shadow into the model. And it's the same thing on the railing. If you look under the railing, it's black. Under the stairs, it's black. And there's a shadow on the ground. Because look, if you, as I hover it, you see a shadow on the ground. I just paint that in to reinforce that. That's what gives your model depth and dimension. So a lot of people, when they look at this, yeah, tracks of mic, but that's what I'm saying. A lot of people go, oh man, you have such great lighting. That's only half of it. I paint the shadows into everything. Everything you see here. So even the telephone poles, if you look at where the transformers are, the transformers are only painted from above. They look white. They look like I have a shadow underneath, but underneath they're black. So I'll show you. Right? Zoom in on that. The bottoms aren't painted. They're dark. So there's a shadow on everything. Everything casts a shadow. So even like when I paint the wood, I paint it from above. Everything casts a shadow. So that's what's going to give. So lighting is important, but the models are so small, an HL scale, and especially if you're doing N, it doesn't create enough of a block to create a real shadow. So you've got to paint those things in. So everything, I paint absolutely everything. That's why if you saw the video I made with painting the bushes and shrubs and stuff, it's the same idea. Daryl, you're not a bad student. I paint the when I make the tufts, I paint them a really dark greenish black, and then I work my way out, because when you look at a bush in real life, The branches and the flowers and the leaves on the outside are a lot brighter than the ones that are on the inside. That's what gives it depth and dimension. So if you look at the bushes and shrubs in the background, those are all painted. Everything is painted. But that's why it looks like it has depth to it, because you're looking at paint that's light green, paint that's medium green, and paint that's dark green and black. It's creating a shadow. I hope that makes sense. But that's the beauty of having a model railroad. We know where the light is coming from. You can be sure. Yeah, the power poles are 100% Boomer. I watched him make them, and I was like, oh yeah, that's the way to go. They just look so good, and they're really pretty easy to make. I mean, he has a great tutorial on it. Just look it up. They're really really nice, and I mean it's just styrene. It's just time consuming, but they come out and they look absolutely gorgeous. Yep, we're all bright on the outside, aren't we, Mike? So yeah, I, I it took me a while to figure out that's what people were saying, because I had so many comments about lighting. When I first started, I actually did a tutorial. I think it was Bill, My Finger Lakes. He was really like just enamored with the lighting, and I've had so many people ask me. And then one day it hit me. I was like, I don't think people figured out that it's less lighting and more paint. I'm basically lighting my layout with paint. But again, that's a study. That's something that you, yeah, exactly, Sparky. Everything. If you want to have a certain look, it's going to take time to do it. But that's studying thing. That's studying how things look in real life. I mean, I can't tell you how long I spent just looking at trees. I mean, I have a volume of pictures of just trees in my computer that I just spent looking at trees. How does this branch affect this? How does the branch catch light here? How does it have dimension? How do I see this as a full object, like Dwight's broccoli? I mean, it's a three-dimensional object, and it's huge. They have such an I mean, trees can be overwhelming. I mean, they really, they're big, and they cast a huge shadow. I mean, they soak up so much light, and it was understanding that. And again, that's a study in light, study in nature, study in trees. So when I paint all of my models, that is like, even if you saw the barn, I was talking about when I was painting the wood, that I didn't go all the way up to the top where the roof met it, because I wanted to live and wanted to leave a little bit of dark up there to help create that shadow effect from the roof when the light hits it from above. All right, just did the Rich Touch. Domino's refineries in Chalmette, Louisiana, Baltimore, and Yonkers. Yonkers! Oh no, probably right by Yonkers Raceway. Probably been to it a million times, never even saw it, right? That's funny. Yonkers. I grew up in upstate New York, so I'm very familiar with that area. That's like where when you get stuck on the road there. I would always get stuck in traffic right by the Stella D'Oro bread factory, and it would just smell like those little bread cookies they make, the little anise things. Oh, dude, it was awful, dude. It was like purgatory. You'd just be sitting there and starving and thirsty. Back then, most of the cars that we had didn't have AC, so you're there, the windows open, and you're right by that factory, and you can smell it for miles. That place would kill you. Sparky, it's a level of understanding too. You're gonna. It's hard to explain, but you're gonna get out of it what you see. So, somebody with a more trained eye, somebody that's looking for more. I Some people just want to see trains run. I can't tell you how many times I look online, YouTube, and somebody just slaps down some track on their carpet, their living room, runs locomotives, and the video has 50,000 views. So people just want to see trains run. That's the basic thing that we all share. And then the level, I think there's multiple levels of what realism is to all of us. Some people want a a realistic visual model. Some people want a realistic operational model, and some people want a realistic functions. So like a working drawbridge or something like that. So we all want different things out of it. We're not so doing a detailed layout like I have here, isn't gonna really turn on somebody that's into like just operational, functioning like a railroad, because it really doesn't. I mean, this is kind of silly for that kind of stuff. It was something to just have, practice, see if I enjoy doing this, and take pictures on it and run some trains because I had them. But I mean, it's not. Chris, we talked about this. I lived right up the road from you, man. I did. I lived in. I went to school in Catskill, and I lived in Greene County. That's what I said. I used to work at Angela Pizza. If you've never been there, you go, oh, man, the pizza's great. If they're still there, it was owned by the Lobianco family. They were great people, um, and the food there was fantastic. And and Daryl, here's my thing. I've been a chef off and on my whole life, right? So when I put out a plate of food, it's divided into three things. You have protein, starch, and vegetable, right? If you've ever been anywhere, that's pretty much what you get on your plate. So that's how I look at everything. You got those three things: protein, starch, and veg, right? If you take 99 people to a buffet, they're all going to come back with 10 starches, 9 proteins, 13, vegetables on their plate, right? Because that's just how we look at that thing. And that's what I think a lot of people in this hobby do. They just see with their eyes and they're like, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you design your layout with that in mind, I'm going to have 1 starch, 1 protein, and 1 vegetable, I think you're going to have a much better experience and a much better looking layout. But we've come into that buffet, and that's just we're constantly bombarded. So we go online, we go on here, we go on YouTube. You see all the stuff that's come out, all the new right, all the new rolling stock, all the new locomotives. I mean, they don't make it easy for us to be selective. You know what I mean? Because it's like we all want more. It's a natural thing, and most of us are some collector at some form. But that's the inherent problem is, just like going to a buffet. Nobody's just going to go get, okay, I'm going to get chicken and rice and broccoli. It's that you're not going to do it because in your mind you're not getting your money's worth. And when you're going to spend the time to do your a spare bedroom or a shelf layout or your entire basement or whatever it is, you're going to try to get your money's worth, and you're going to put on there what you want to see on there. Mike, I'm in purgatory here because I'm almost done. So I got a few little decisions that I have to make, and then I would make basically the top that holds the lights and box everything. It was supposed to be shadow box, and it eventually will be. And I may extend the one side 1 foot just so I can hide some stuff on the one side, and then put a couple feet on the other side just so I can switch back and forth the rail, because I cut out the runaround that I had in the middle of the track. But now it actually matches the prototype the way it's built now. The problem is my area in Florida has become so expensive that I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to live in this house or in Florida. Now I have room to do exactly what I want to build in where this is right now. If I just pull this out and put that in, I have room because I have 20 linear feet by 12 linear feet by 8 linear feet, and I can make the U shape or a triangle shape layout of my dreams. And it wouldn't take me that much work, but I don't know if I can do that here. So I'm kind of stuck. Now I could take this out and just start over again because, like I said, this really isn't a function of the very well functioning layout. So that's where I'm stuck. I'm probably not going to do any more to this layout. You know, and this layout may not even exist in 6 months to a year. I don't even know. I like I said, I don't know what's going to happen with me. I never thought that I would be in this position, but I think when Daryl and a couple other guys in here might remember the last time I was live, I was talking about this. When I moved here in 2002, and it was really cheap. I bought a house, and I moved away, and I lost everything. I got married, and moved to, and yeah, I'm gonna start pimping. And I had to restart over. I moved back here in 2015, and it was still really cheap, and I should have bought a house then. But now the market here has gone, and everything's expensive everywhere. I mean, gas, electricity, everything has gone up, and housing has gone up everywhere. Because I looked when I started to get into that world where I was like, oh my God, I got to do something. But just to give you an example, so I don't live that far from Naples. Naples is overrun, so that whole world has started to creep north. So the other day when I first moved here, this was basically like a lot of empty land, a lot of rednecks, it was just old Florida. And I went to the grocery store the other day, well, it was a couple weeks ago, because I know I said the same thing last time. And I pulled into a parking spot, and directly in front of me, there was a convertible Rolls Royce. Next to me was a Ferrari, and on the other side was a Bentley. I mean, this didn't happen here, you know, and that's what this area has come. They've come through, and they've built so many. Like when I first moved here, I looked at a house to rent that was cheap, but it was a dump. That place is gone. That whole neighborhood is gone, and in its place is high-rise condos that start at $1 million. You can't buy anything here for under, you know, 500 grand. You know, in that's new. There's older houses, but everything's 200-300 grand. When I moved here in 15, you could still buy houses for, you know, 120, 100 grand. And that, you know, you're talking just not even 10 years later. So and everything has gone up. The taxes in Florida are out of control. So I'm stuck, is what I'm saying. And I don't know what to do. So I rolled up in my Ford. Yep, that's what I did. I rolled up in my Ford. Yeah, it's like that everywhere. But this is one of those areas. It was so cheap for so long, and there's so much empty space. Like I went and took pictures of my old house the other day because I was out in that neighborhood, and I walked around and I was just saying, "Holy effing bleep," over and over because I couldn't believe what they had built out there. There used to be an old, like the road that led to my house was like a 2-lane highway with just a yellow stripe down the middle. On a average night, I would drive down. I've never seen any traffic. There was like, I'd see alligators or something like that on this road. It was just out in the middle. It was like getting towards the swamps. And on a moonlit night, I could turn my headlights off and drive just with the moonlight. There was nothing out there. I went out there the other day. It was a 6-lane divided highway to get to my house. I almost died. And there was just apartment buildings, and new complexes everywhere. They built so much stuff here. It's absolutely insane. Yeah, I like my Ford. There you go, Daryl. There's my Ford. That's what I drive. Eventually I'll yeah, I wish, man. GT350 was nice. I got to the point where I love cars. I really do. And I love sports cars, and I've had a lot of sports cars in my past, but I'm at the point now where I wouldn't spend the money. Cars are just so expensive. I was gonna buy a Bronco, and I was gonna buy a base model Bronco just because I wanted. It was less about the. Yeah, it was. I didn't want to spend the money, but I didn't want to buy. I was just gonna buy a 2-door base model, and they deleted it And I was like, oh, okay, that's it. I'll just keep driving my little Ford Escape. It's not a rocket. It's a 4-cylinder turbo, but it does the job. The dog likes it. She gets to go on adventures. So Mike, that I hope that answers your question. Long-winded. I have no idea what's going to happen to this layout. I want to build another one, and uh, I really wish I could start on it as soon as possible, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it anytime soon or if ever. A lot of things have to change in the world and in my life to be able to do that. Yeah, that you're welcome, PK. I think that was why I want to say that, because I think a lot of people miss that, and I know almost everybody watches Boomer at some point or another, and he says that over and over. But I think a lot of people miss that, and they think that this just looks good because I have good lights, and I have crappy lights. This right now is being lit by 2 desk lamps. This whole board. I have a full set of LED shop lights that I'm going to put in the shadow box once I build it, but that's not installed yet. This is just two desk lamps. Mike, I'll always do something. So even if I had no layout, I would just go to detailing stuff. I'm not gonna stop building models. I've been building models my whole life. So that's not going to end. I would still do videos and detail box cars or something. I make trees, whatever it is. They're not going to stop me from that. But having a full functioning layout, I mean, it might come down to just a little piece of wood with some track on it. Which, I mean, when you got nothing, anything is good, right? But I'm not going to stop building models. And I'm at the point now where I really I built RC cars and RC crawlers my whole life, and I miss that. And some of the projects that I put off, like I have a Jeep project that I had about 600 hours in. It was all scratch built, and I stopped building. I had a lot of crap happen to me, and it was just too much to focus. So I put it away, and there was a lot of detail stuff that I was struggling with, but working in this scale, so working 187 scale, now I can go make the things that I have wanted to make in 110 scale without a doubt. So I can detail the engine bay, I can detail the interior, fully working dashboard, all that stuff. So I'm really excited to go back to that project, because that's one that I wanted to finish, because that was, it's funny. It's like, I get the weirdest emails sometimes from some of my old RC buddies, and where my photos of my stuff end up sometimes is hilarious. They're like, oh my God, your picture ended up here, or, this person has your picture on their site. It's just wild. Because again, I built realistic looking models and I took realistic pictures, so it fooled a lot of people. Yeah, exactly. The European guys, there's a lot. So I was a member of Tamiya Club, which was in England, and there was a lot of people from Sweden, Germany, Norway, some South America. Phenomenal models, phenomenal. And we were working in multimedia. It was not only styrene but brass. These guys, some of them had machine shops. One of my friends in England, he had a machine shop, and they actually machined, because there's a lot of the Formula One teams are based out of the UK, and so a lot of those local businesses support those. So he was machining wheels for us, and so I still have a few sets of just beautifully machined 110 scale truck wheels, aluminum. Good stuff. That was guys that just made all sorts of parts. The coolest things were, we all did these RC bugs, little VW bugs, and So there was a couple of them that really gained a lot of notoriety. It was about a dozen. Like everybody knew if you were in the hobby, you just saw and you knew exactly what it was. And there was a guy in Austria who had like these. I want to say they were 124th, 124 scale models, and he did all of the models that we have built in 124 scale to the T. It was amazing. So he went and built like a scale model of our scale models. It was the coolest thing. Yeah, it is. So yeah, I will eventually. I don't get a lot of traction on this because this used to be. So I started this site in around '06. I started posting on here RC stuff, and I stopped right around 2012, somewhere in that range. So for 6 years, so I had a lot of followers. I had a lot of videos on here, but all of them contain music. So I got dinged on all of them for copyright. They removed a lot of them. They took the sound away. I only have one left. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's one RC truck running. But when I post RC stuff now, there's only a few people that actually like it. And I don't think I have any of my old followers. I think I still have some of them following me, but I don't think they're really involved in YouTube anymore, which is kind of sad because I would get their posts, if they did. So my RC stuff on here doesn't get a lot of traction, but I think I'm gonna interplay both of them. So I'll try to post equally, and try to build up a following for RC back up, because I like 110 scale. It's a little bit easier to work with. The models, you can do a lot more detail, and it's fun. And I love cars. I love trucks. You can sell them. Why wouldn't? Are you attached to them that much? I mean, why can't you sell them, Dwayne? Just put them on eBay. What do you have? Most of my stuff is vintage stuff, so it's easy to sell. But I mean, if you have like Traxxas and all that whatever, you can sell that stuff. Somebody will buy it. Just put it on eBay. But I've got planes. I've got cars. Yeah, you can sell a T Max on eBay. If you don't want it, just put it on eBay. You'll have it sold in no time. But that's kind of that's one of the pitfalls. If you have like something like a T Max, if you go buy something like that and you don't have a club or somewhere to race it or do all those things, it gets really boring. You can only rip up and down the street so many times before you get tired of it. That only takes a couple weeks. But if you build rock crawlers and you do a lot of scratch work, it becomes like this hobby. You're involved in it. It's more personal. It's a little bit of a different thing. So it keeps your interest longer. Here, zoom out here. There you go, Dwight. PK, what I do everything a little bit different, and most of it is based off of, again, what I saw Boomer doing? I tack it down. So I'll tack the track down in spots with CA just to hold it, and then I'll come back and I'll fill in all the ballast, and then I'll soak it down with alcohol, isopropyl, and then I'll just douse it with a mix of matte medium and water. So it's usually about a 50-50 mix, and you've got to do that, like let it dry and then do it again, and it's solid. And the beauty of that is if you have to rip up the track, all you have to do is spray it back down with isopropyl, wait like 10 minutes, and you can just scrape it all off. Every rock will come off. Yeah, I know. Trust me, I sold F350s. An 04 F350 was, an XL was right around 22 grand, and a Lariat was, right around 35, 40 grand. So yeah, you could get an F450 dually limited, and it's $97,000, maybe a little bit over right now. So once I get the ballast set, then I come and I spray it with usually depending on where it is on the track, I'll spray it with a dark, like a combination of black and some sort of brown, and I'll come back in with a lighter brown and I'll spray over it, and then again, depending on where it is, I'll come back and I'll paint individual ties with an even lighter brown, gray, and tans, which I'm always hesitant to move the camera, but show you what I'm talking about. So bear with me, guys. Camera's moving. Okay. So you can look here, and you can see that I've actually faded out right here. You can see where it goes from light to gray. So I did spray this stuff, but again, like I said, I paint everything. So this is painted, but this is more light. But you see, I wanted a grimy look because this is right next to this really trashed out area. So everything is really dark right there. You see that? So right here, it's all painted. This is very dark black, very dark. But if you look at a lot of rails, they look like this. This is really, really dark. The wood is dark. The ground is saturated. It's nasty. So that was the look that I was going for, and that was. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go too because my battery's running low. So I'll probably cut this short. Thanks, man. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate you. And then you can see, I'll go down here and you can see how the ties are actually painted. I'll see if I can raise this up a bit. If you look there, you can see throughout here, the ties are individually painted. So the ballast is still painted there. I go and I spray everything. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'll cut it short here in a little bit. If anybody else has any kind of questions or something, I'll be more than happy to answer them. But yeah, all the trucks are ridiculous, man. I know, trust me. And it was so funny because when I was at Ford, they would come out with a new model. So I was there until 2019, and whatever the last model change was probably around 17, 18, I think it was. And the prices would hit, and then I would have all the old guys like, who's gonna spend this much money a Super Duty or whatever it was. And then those were the trucks we couldn't keep on the ground. So yeah, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 trucks gone like that. You'd have a list of people that wanted one. And I would laugh every time somebody would say that. I'm like, dude, you're not gonna be able to keep that thing in stock. It's gonna sell the first day it hits the ground. It was amazing. But Ford really put themselves in a pretty unique situation because You know, I had customers that were coming in, you know, they were driving a Range Rover and they'd leave out in a you know, a platinum F-150 because it was, you weren't giving anything up. It was, you know, you still had all the little nuances that made a Land Rover, and you had, you know, the class, but you could get away with looking like an actual person. All right, y'all. Thanks for hanging out with me. Hope I didn't talk your ear to death. I ended up stopping running trains and just ended up talking, but that's cool. You guys are a great group. I'm glad you guys are around. It's fun. It's fun to go in. I know almost all of you stream too, and it's always fun to go in there, watch your videos, hang out, listen to you guys. I appreciate it. It's always good, you know, to have this. I've never been a big join a club kind of guy, and you know, so this is my club. You guys are my club. So it's always fun to go hang out. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Mike. Daryl. Love you, buddy. Dwight, send me some broccoli. Russ, man, glad you're still here, buddy. Yeah, I'll keep my head up. Like I said, I'll always build models and I'll always share them. There's not been one point in my life, especially after, you know, the internet, that I haven't shared this part of what I do. Before that, I mean, I still shared. I always when I used to do Tamiya stuff, I always used to call myself the greatest ambassador of Tamiya. I never knew that existed because that's what I did. I just spent so much time. Like I would go somewhere to run cars or something like that, and people would show up, and I would spend more time running. I would go there with an intention to do this, take pictures or whatever, and I would end up spending more time talking to people and showing stuff. Papa John, good night, buddy. So I mean, I've always wanted to share this because and share my experience, share my knowledge, because, you know, together we all get better. That's what makes hobbies like this great. I didn't learn all this stuff for myself. I had people, you know, that were willing to share and show what they had and show how to do things. So we all get better together. This is part of it. All right, I'm gonna shut it down, guys. If I can remember how. Yeah, Russ, I'm the same way. Sometimes I'll do other stuff and you know, whatever, just, you know, somebody stream and people will be talking, and I don't even watch the chat. Sometimes I'm just listening to the people on there. So I understand. Take care, guys. Later.